Okay, I'm going to do a video. I just had to check this worm bin. I use these hooks, and I just hook it over the side of the worm bin. This is one that I guess you'd call red flagging. I turned it yesterday and had a lot of manure, and I added leaves with moisture, which means things are going to warm up. So this morning, within a certain amount of time, you know, those bacteria and stuff all start cranking. And I can feel it. It's warm. So it's saying it's 85, 84. And I always just check right in the center, which that's, I mean, the red wigglers, 84, 85, they can handle that. It's not going to kill anything cocoon-wise, unless, I got to make sure that oxygen can still, which gets your bacteria growing so fast, because they're just heating up like that, you're going to want to turn it or something to get oxygen back down in there, especially if you don't have a lot of big chunks in your worm bin. And so you'll notice these guys coming up top. I also want to talk about what my worm bin has in there and why I've chosen that. So on the outer edges, it's going to be cooler, so that's where your worms are going to be, more or less hanging out, because they want to get cooled down, and then they're going to want to come to the top, because that's where actual, you know, atmospheric pressure is going to be able to push some oxygen down to them. So you got to watch all these factors. You know, you don't want your worms to go in a no oxygen environment with these bacteria feeding like crazy and multiplying and just decreasing the oxygen level in this bin. That's why I had it on my critical list here, right when you first turn it. You don't know what your ratios are in here, your carbon to nitrogen ratios, which then they're going to want to start, you know, doing some chemical reaction. So this little guy here with the purple head, that's one of those blue, Indian blue worms. And this guy here, he's does not have a purple head. He's got that clitellum, and he's got a little orange or yellow looking tail. And that's my red wigglers. And the reason it was by accident, yet perfectly seems like by design, I want a diversity of worms in here. One, I think because the different worms, I'm going to throw some of those Europeans, they like a lower, so they like a deeper bedding. So they're going to go lower in the soil. Then my red wigglers, they're going to want to be in the top layer of the soil. These bins I am making so that I can produce the Eco Ag bioamendments, which is basically a fertilizer that's carbon friendly, eco-friendly, and I'm also going to try to push the fungal to bacterial ratio, you know, either fungal dominant or bacterial dominant, depending on the crop that I'm going to be growing the next year. And so my thought is, if I'm going to be putting these worms out into the soil, each one is going to offer me a distinct difference in, I guess, activity, benefit in my soil. They're going to help break up that compaction. I need those Europeans to go deep so they can break up the compaction down low. And each one, I believe, is probably going to be, you know, feeding or have a bacterial content colonizing their digestive tract that offers some sort of a benefit, just because of the different levels to which they like to travel under the soil. So like your apparently the Indian ones like to come up more often, and yes, those are always the ones that I'll see coming up here on the top layer the most. So maybe they'll have the most diversity in their gut because they are at the different levels of the soil where I think different oxygen layers get, so there will be different bacteria. Also the heat, you know, sun hits the soil and it gets heated at different areas. So I'm just trying to be as diverse as possible. From what I've learned is the less diversity you have, the more diseases that start to happen, not only in like the health realm, but also just societal realm, or any which way you want to look at it. Diversity is the key to survival. So basically, I'm looking for that bacterial diversity. I'm looking for that, the aeration, which worms traveling through the soil at different depths. So I want every worm there. I want each one doing its part and keeping my soil healthy. And that's why I've chosen to go ahead and put them in the bin that way, so they can all live in the bin doing different things in different levels of the bin to help keep that ecosystem as diverse as possible. I'm also adding as many diverse feedstocks as possible. I've got leaves, I've got cardboard, I'm getting the cocoa, I don't know, core. I can't even say that right. Coconut core. I order. So obviously there's going to be a specific bacteria that breaks down this stuff. So I want even just a small amount of this in there, not necessarily for the bedding, but for the biodiversity. I'm adding the these here are the cotton seed hulls. I'll do a video on what also I've noticed happens when I add these cotton seed hulls, but the worms love them one. Obviously, some bacteria is going to be eating cotton, so I'm adding that in there. What else have I got? I add the ag line. This here, I'll add a little bit of wood shavings. There's obviously a bacteria that's going to be crunching up wood shavings and helping that break down, but that's also fungus. Right now, you're seeing a bin that's probably going to be more fungal dominant. I'm walking over here because I got something that I gotta get. I also add, and that is some wool. I always add a little bit of wool in there, and I was amazed. I believe it's fungus maybe that's breaking this wool down so fast. But I mean, I think in the 3 weeks time that a lot of people do their breeder bins, it's possible this wool can be pretty crunched down. I mean, and not sticking together by the time you're going to be needing to, I mean, if you're sifting cocoons out, probably not. But I mean, when I move these from my breeder bins to the nursery bins all in one shot, I'm taking this wool with it. Wool absorbs 30% of its moisture. So my fingers now, I can feel that lanolin in there. So there's certain bacteria that you on the lanolin in here. So now we're adding that bacteria to the bin. So the diversity is getting increased rapidly with all just these different particles. I've got some pine needles in here. There's all kinds of species of tree leaves that are getting added. Some grass clippings. I use the animal donkey manure and the horse manures, and I dry those out, and they add the bacterial and species diversity in there. So the goal is to add as many different things as you can find. It doesn't have to be a lot. Kelp is another one that I added. Think of all the ocean stuff that's, bacteria that's there. Not that I'm going to have that bacteria in my field, but that does not necessarily mean that bacteria can't, I don't want to say learn, because that's a no-no. They don't learn to do it. It's already innate in them, a genetic disposition that would cause them to be able to still break down something new, even though it's not necessarily in the genes for the whole group. It's like, if we think about what they say, I think humans, like, we wouldn't have had a certain trait to digest certain foods, except for that there was a mutation in someone and they were able to. So that's how we evolved. Or bacteria is the same way. There's always an antibiotic resistant bacteria out there. It's just that it's so watered down, and when they multiply, that trait doesn't necessarily get passed on. But when they use antibiotics and kill off every bacteria that doesn't have the trait, now the two bacteria that possibly did have it come together, now you got a whole herd of antibiotic resistant bacteria. So we want diversity. We want to water that back down after we've killed it all and concentrated the bad ones, which we call the bad ones. I'm not necessarily saying they're bad or good. They're here and probably have a benefit we just haven't found yet. Now, that's why I'm adding all the diverse feedstocks. That's feeding a ton of different species, and not just bacteria, fungi, all the arthropods, micro, macro. This is a biocomplete system that we're not eliminating anybody from, except for right now I'm trying to eliminate the anaerobics, because I want to keep that nitrogen in a form that I want to utilize in my cash crop. Cash crop's going to need the NH4, not nitrates, and that's why I don't want that smelly, stinky compost, because that's telling me there's a noxious gas being produced. It means I'm losing my nitrogen that I'm wanting to conserve for my fertilizer. Okay, that's the in-depth thing on why I go ahead and use all these worms. I've also harvested some wild worms from my garden that I fed all summer, and I've got them in a bin. So those are my wild worms, which have the genetic diversity for my specific area, and I'm probably going to start breeding those in with the ones that I've purchased. But I want you to know that's why I chose not to be selective with the worms. I don't want to isolate just the red wigglers. Okay, that's when you start getting specialized. That's when I feel like problems start to happen. And I think they're finding a lot more what's called quorum sensing and amplification of benefits when you do start to diversify your species and your organisms. None of this pure breeding stocks. Not that they crossbreed anyway, I'm just saying is just keep everything as diverse as possible. There's definitely probably a benefit to having those two together, whether it's disease, predators, things like that. So I know there's a lot of push for, we don't want those Indian blues. We don't want, we want them separated. We want pure stock. Fine. I'm always on that mindset myself, and I'm trying to break myself of that. I want diversity, and things don't have to be perfect. So there you go. There's my 2 cents. There's why I'm doing it. I have had a lot of good luck. My Indian blues haven't been ever yet decided to jump ship and take off out of the container unless, there's a heat situation going on that I have to stop, or, maybe it's too acidic or too basic. I don't know. I've never had the problem. But I do know in the past when I tried to raise worms, I did, but it was my fault. It wasn't their fault. And then, so that other people don't selectively choose one just because people say, oh, this is the better worm for, this is the better worm for. I am having a really good luck with, I'm not having any die-offs. I'm not having anybody take off out of the bins. I do keep a eye on them now. I didn't all summer, so who knows? Some might have gotten out, but I didn't see that. I had them on a concrete slab outside, so I didn't see that. But I've really increased my numbers, so obviously quite a few of them stayed. They were happy in their environment, and that's what you got to have, a happy environment for them. And what's that going to need? A very diverse micro biology and fungal soil food web, so that they can all live together and benefit from one another. There's symbiotic relationship there. We don't want to break that apart. Okay, that's it for this video. Don't want to use up everybody's time, and I know I tend to ramble, but I feel like all this information is very, very, very important. And a lot of people are missing a lot of these small things that add up to huge in the end, especially when you're selling your castings. And people are actually looking for a specific casting for a specific purpose, like I am. And that's why I've gone to just doing it myself, because, one, I have a problem with trusting the process, that it is being done correctly, and that I'm not going to be adding a bunch of nitrates to my system, my fields, and then creating myself a bigger problem in the end when the weeds are feeding off those, because that's promoting weeds. And that other people who are trying to make a difference, they're sabotaged just through lack of knowledge, because they'll purchase something and not realize that they need to purchase a specific product. So maybe, if I can just raise the awareness that we're really looking for a very specific product, and that if you could alter your product to better suit the needs of, you know, us doing the eco ag, and then we can rely on those producing a product that we really need, that really makes a huge impact on what we're doing, because we're trying to make a difference, and yet there are some stages there that are being missed, and I'm going to try to correct that myself, but I want to help others be able to correct it as well. I mean, how can you correct something if you have no knowledge of it? So I'm just putting the word out there. I'm not saying it's, you know, written in stone like just yet, but apparently after I researched this, I'm starting to see what, you know, they are saying, and so I'm going to roll with it for now. We're going to see what kind of benefits we end up with. I don't necessarily have all the equipment to make it all the way to the end product, though, and that's one thing that, you know, is going to hold me back showing you guys, you know, how this can be done, and maybe it can be done really well if all these factors line up, and the end product is going to be nutrient dense, because this is where it begins and the food on the table is where it ends, and I'm going to do my best to produce the most nutritious eco-friendly product possible. So stay tuned. If you guys know more, comment. If you can help me, comment. I'm just going to keep plugging along, trying to make this happen, and hopefully the word gets out and the rest of you can start playing around with your worms so that you can get a product that we can start selling to the people who want to convert and change over to this more eco-friendly bioag, but they can't get what they need in order to make it work. So let's get rocking and rolling, everybody. Have a wonderful day in your worm room today.